Welcome back to the AI Ripple Effect podcast, everybody. Today, we're joined from New Jersey by Robert Smith, who is the founder and company owner at Robert Smith ASO and Associates LLC. Robert, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Adrian. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm looking forward to hearing, we had a brief chat earlier, and I'm looking forward to hearing some of those stories that you're able to have regarding what you guys do. But why don't we start initially by you giving us a bit of a background on your journey to where you are today and a bit more about what Robert Smith ASO and Associates does and who you serve from a customer perspective, please.
Thank you. Well, I'm a retired New Jersey state trooper. Retired as a result of a few motor vehicle accidents where I had to sustain several back surgeries over the course of a couple of years. So I went into retirement, and over the course of 2 or 3 years of rehabilitation, I was finally able to get back into working shape. Unfortunately, not to the level required to be a New Jersey state trooper. So after retirement, naturally, I went into what is a natural progression for police officers, security, then school security, high school. Security became a very demanding area. So I went into that area, and I kept wondering if there were other programs available that I would be a good candidate for. And I learned about the ASO program, and eventually it was very difficult and time consuming. But I was fortunate enough to finally get into the program, receive my certification. And for the last 8 years, I've been flying.
Awesome. And who are your typical customers when you operate, Robert?
That's a very interesting question, because the ASO program, when it was designed or created in 2005 after the 9/11 attacks, I'll give you just a little background. Washington, D.C., Ronald Reagan Airport is the closest airport to the Capitol. It's 3 miles. The closest airport after that is Dulles Airport, which is 20 miles. The only problem with Dulles is you have to travel the D.C. Beltway, which I understand, if you're not familiar with it, but I think you are, is a nightmare. Cost anywhere from an hour to 2 hours of travel, depending on what time of day you're on it. So Ronald Reagan Airport was receiving about 30 corporate jets a day prior to 9/11. Well, then after 9/11, they shut it down till 2005. The Federal Air Marshal Service didn't have the manpower to manage the private corporate flights. So they created a in-house program where corporations can create their own private air marshal, for lack of a better term. They developed the ASO program.
Right.
And to be an ASO, you have to be a retired police officer with a certain amount of years of credible service. You go through a federal air marshal training program, condensed. You're given a lot of credit for your 25 years of service and training already. And then you can operate as a security officer on the flight deck for that corporate jet. So there aren't too many independents. When I really started to study the program, I saw a gap in the market where, what about the occasional flyer? The companies that fly into DC on a regular basis, they take on the additional cost of having an ASO. But what about the company that wants to avoid the nightmare traffic on the Beltway, but doesn't want to pay for the full-time security services that they have to have on staff? So that's the market share I've been tapping into, and it was surprising how much there is of untapped potential.
Amazing. It sounds like a really interesting segment. You must meet some really interesting people. In that breadth of corporate customers that you engage with, you must get a good feel for what's going on in the market. And in that vein, what are key trends you're seeing in transportation and logistics, for example, out there in the marketplace?
Well, it's not surprising. Anytime you watch the news, there's more and more incidents happening on commercial flights, be it delays, be it people trying to smuggle firearms on their carry-on luggage, unruly passengers. These things have a ripple effect because they cause delayed flights, canceled flights, forced landings, which a lot of people didn't know, and I didn't know until I spoke to some air marshals I'm familiar with now. The cost involved with a forced unscheduled landing is tremendous. That airplane has to go to the front of the line, and all those other airplanes go to the back of the line, which causes more fuel. The person who caused that incident is going to get arrested, is going to be put on the no-fly list, is probably going to be sued by other passengers who missed important business meetings and family events, things of that nature. So that in itself has translated into a boom in the private aviation, where more people are willing to pay a little more to avoid all the headaches and TSA hassles. And that's another separate issue I'd like to get into in a little bit. And that's what's caused a greater demand for my services when it comes specifically to access to Washington, D.C.
Amazing. And are you seeing in your interactions much more of a growth generally, volume-wise, in people wanting to fly domestically? And is that related to, I mean, do you focus purely on domestics, or are you international as well?
As far as the ASO program is concerned, it's a mandate only for Ronald Reagan National Airport.
Okay.
However, we are expanding one of my affiliations with a private jet company because that's the next wave in air travel, and the airlines have tried to stop it from happening. More private charter companies are operating as the same as a commercial airline, where they're doing dedicated routes, but they offer much more convenience, availability, less stress, less hassle. So that's become a real issue between the commercial and private industry.
Fascinating. And in this environment that you're operating in, Robert, what is your take on artificial intelligence as a positive force for change, or as a negative disruptor that causes more challenges than it can provide benefit?
Well, for me personally, I use AI constantly. For an example, I had a flight the other day in Long Island. And a lot of times, if I have a flight in Chicago, Miami, LA, San Francisco, whatever, I have to fly commercial to get to that private airport. And obviously, I'm not familiar with every private airport, every city, every town. So I'll use AI to help me generate the best travel arrangements to and from to avoid, so I can get to where I need to be in the least amount of time that's going to make me the most dependable and efficient. Specifically talking about a flight I had where I had to take a train from Philadelphia up to Union Station in New York City.
Yeah,
On another train, I'm not familiar with the train stations to go to Long Island, and I told the AI where exactly I needed to be and the time, and they would plot out a step by step. When you come off the train on this train number, you're going to go to your left. You're going to look at this screen. Your next train is leaving in 20 minutes. You won't
amazing.
have a problem. So that's very reassuring.
Fantastic. And in your journey so far with Robert Smith and ASO and Associates, or even before then, what have been the key hurdles that you've encountered, Robert? And how have you managed to circumnavigate those?
Well, because they're, like I had said earlier, there aren't a lot of independent ASOs that are willing to travel anywhere in the country within 24 hours, and that's a rule within the Washington D.C. airport requirements. You need to apply if you're a private corporate entity, jet charter company. You need to apply 24 hours before you want to just land. So you have to be able within that 24-hour notice to be anywhere in the country, and that takes time to build up that reputation.
Right.
Over the last 8 years, I think I've been very successful in doing that, and using platforms like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, things of that nature have helped me sustain that reputation.
Awesome. And now that you've gone through that process and you have the hindsight, the benefit of the hindsight, if you hypothetically had a time machine, Robert, and were able to go back to a point in the past and you were able to change one thing, what would it be?
I would have started earlier. I retired in 2006. By the time I got done all my physical rehab and everything by 2010, I would have started then. Had I known about the program and the opportunity, but again, that took time. I mean, it's taken me 8 years
Yeah.
to get to this level. I received an amazing compliment from one of the staff in DCA the other day, because they had another ASO speak to her on the side, asking her, how can I get more flights? This is the challenges. And she told me about it, and I know exactly where he's operating out of. I operate out of there quite often. And it's just a question of networking, availability, and the number one quality is dependability. And if you have a moment, I'll tell you a funny story.
Right.
I had a flight that was starting out of DCA, so Washington, D.C. So I had to be down there by a certain time. 4 o'clock, I believe, was the departing flight. So I scheduled a 12 o'clock train because it only takes 50 minutes from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C. Now, I knew there were demonstrations going on at the Capitol that particular day, but from all my research, and AI wasn't a mainstream availability at that time, it just said most of the demonstrations were going to be down at the Capitol. So I come into Union Station, and my normal procedure is I take an Uber over to the airport. It's about another 20 minutes. I get to the train station, and it's total mayhem. There's police cars everywhere. They have 4 blocks circumference of the train station walled off because now the demonstrations are coming to Union Station. I have the director of security of the International Bank client that I'm, scheduled to fly for. You better get here. And I'm like, I'm working on it. So now it was an overnight trip, so I have luggage with me. And so I'm like, all right. So I tried talking to one of the local police officers. They're getting all their ride gear on. So I just started walking. I walk about 4 blocks, and traffic's backed up in every direction. I saw a Metro police officer directing traffic. I walked up to him. I identified myself. I explained to him. I go, sir, I have to be at the airport in 20 minutes. Can you help a brother out? He goes, 1 second. He sees a cab, pulls him over. He goes, get this guy where he needs to go. I got there 5 minutes before the executive. It was
Nice.
So it's funny now. It wasn't funny then, and it wasn't funny to anybody waiting for me. The pilot was waiting at the door for me at the airport. So that was a lesson learned. I will never make that mistake again.
That's very good, but a great story as well to have in your back pocket anytime you want to reference it. So that's really interesting. Thanks, Robert, for sharing. And for the future, for Robert Smith ASO and Associates, what do you have in the next period of time? What expansion plans, what growth targets have you got, or even product-wise, what are you up to?
Thank you, because these are 2 topics I really, really wanted to touch on. The first one is TSA just put out a request for information a couple of weeks ago, asking private businesses how they can improve security, client, customer experience, and using technology and to enhance screening and quicken the screening time. With support of a client of mine, I submitted a RFI, request for information, specifically under Part 135 under the FAA private charter program, because like I said, they're expanding into those shared charter flights, that the use of an ASO, armed security officer, retired police officer, instead of having to spend millions upon millions of dollars expanding infrastructure in all the private airports throughout the country on a national level, let's start, just like we do on the Washington, D.C. flights, let's start putting retired police officers on these flights. It'll cut down in expense. It'll cut down on waiting time for the clients, for the people. It's very affordable. It's very flexible, and it can be expanded on a national level. So with the TSA, we put in our RFI, request for information, and we broke down the cost compared to what the cost would be for equipment, TSA trained equipment operators, their benefits, insurance, all those things combined, compared to using a retired police officer, retired, no benefits needed. The jet company would absorb all workers' comp and liability insurance. So from a debit credit ledger point of view, it's a lot more affordable if we encompass this program to enhance security, because that's what it's all about.
Right.
Because on the private aircraft, there's no locked door between the cockpit and the flight deck. So that's the biggest concern. So now, if you had to retrofit every private jet out there, that cost would be insurmountable and possibly just destroy the business industry in itself. So this is a much more cost-effective way, and I would give you this analogy. Unfortunately, now with schools and the active shooters that are unfortunately a very unfortunate reflection of our society at this time. What did we do? We took highly trained, experienced police officers and we put them in schools. And it's been very effective. And the principle is the same. The presence of the police officer, retired police officer in the schools, in and of itself, it's unquantifiable how many active shooters that is deterred. So the same principle I'm applying to private jets and private travel. So that's what I proposed to TSA. And a second one, and end up on this one, is I was contacted a couple of years ago by a reality TV show who actually wanted to do a show about what an ASO does. So I actually had a jet company that was willing to allow a film crew on a jet, but then we started getting into logistical issues. And the more the production company was explaining the type of thing, and the best way to analogize what they were looking for is the TV show Below Deck, the reality TV show. So that was basically where their head was at from a production standpoint, and logistically from a air travel, it just had a lot of challenges. So a year or two later, we went back and with a different jet company because now we were going to focus on the crews instead of the passengers. Let's focus on the relationships between the cabin hostesses and the pilots and the because they travel all over the world and they see so many amazing things, and we try to package it as more of a travel reality TV show. And again, that just came with a lot of logistical challenges, so that's been put on the back burner. However, what it did create was it gave me the idea of because speaking with the production company, because a lot of people don't know about the ASO program. It's not a secret, but it is a non-advertised, non-promoted program by the Department of Homeland Security. So a lot of information we have about the program, the traveling public has no idea. And I thought, what a great idea would be for a script. So I actually put an outline together based on a character of a retired police officer who became a private air marshal. And, it's always based, Washington, D.C. is always based in the background. And the best analogy I can give you is that it's a cross between Homeland and 24. Yeah. So I put that together and I've been trying to find screenwriters and everything like that. And every once in a while I get some interest and try to promote it. But I did register the overview of the idea just in case somebody, says, oh, that was a great idea. I think I'll take it. So I tried to protect the idea as best I could.
So Hollywood beckons is what you're saying.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, listen, we'll watch this space for your star on Hollywood Boulevard, and that's obviously around the corner, Robert.
Funnier things have happened, Adrian.
True. Listen, that's brilliant. Thanks so much for sharing, Robert. For the folks out there listening and watching who are interested to find out more about Robert Smith ASO and Associates, where can they get that information?
I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if you type in Robert Smith ASO and Associates, I'll pop right up. It gives you a history of how I got involved in the ASO program. I list all the different clients I work for, the different companies, and my availability. I'm always updating on a daily basis the problems with commercial travel, the threats that are being faced, all the unruly passengers that are calling, unscheduled landings, what it results in, lost productivity, delayed, canceled flights, and things of that nature. So I'm always trying to keep the public, and I'm very fortunate. I have 11,000 followers, all from the aviation industry, flight coordinators to travel agents to private jet companies, affiliates with commercial air travel, the security field, law enforcement, and again using technology. There's a lot of information out there. It's just a matter of learning how to access it and promote it to your business structure or business plan. So I've been very fortunate and successful in that.
Good. Well, listen, we'll make sure that we include all of those links and references in the description of the podcast when it goes out, so that folks out there can get more info on you guys and what you do. So thank you, Robert, very much for sharing and giving us a fascinating background on the ASO service and what you guys do. Really, really interesting. Thank you, everybody out there, for watching and listening to this episode of the AI Ripple Effect podcast. We'll see you in the next episode. But for now, Robert Smith ASO Associates, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. It really has been. Thank you.